Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mnangagwa and his administration have been promising economic prosperity. His so-called Vision 2030, in which the country's income per capita is supposed to grow at least threefold, turning the poor Zimbabwe into an upper middle income nation in 5 years' time, is but a mirage. When Mnangagwa got into power following the coup of 2017, he came on the promise that he was going to revive the nation's economy. Zimbabwe is open for business, he said. And he promised a lot of things, among which were to stamp out corruption, to hold free, fair, and credible elections, etc., etc. As we know, corruption was bad during Mugabe's time. It has gone into overdrive during Mnangagwa's time. Free, fair, and credible elections, he never delivered that either. Zimbabwe has been plagued with the problem of rigged elections ever since the country's independence. And that situation, unfortunately, has not changed. And he is not repented either. He is on record boasting that the people would be forced to go and vote for ZANU-PF during the 2023 elections. He boasted that they will have a headman in front, the people will follow behind, and behind them will be the ZANU-PF official marching the people to the polling station. And he boasted that we will know how you voted. And it is true. ZANU-PF has instituted a system that allows the party to know how people vote. That is what is so wrong with our electoral system. The regime has increased the number of polling stations to the point where in 2008 and before that, there were about 10 or so polling stations in each constituency. This number has been increased to over 50 polling stations. And instead of having a constituency voters roll, the regime has changed the system so that it's now a polling station voters roll. You can only vote in one polling station. And with the increase in number of polling stations, it means the number of voters in each polling station has been reduced considerably. In 2023, there were supposedly 5 million registered voters. And there were over 10,000 polling stations. So you're roughly looking at about 500 voters per polling station. If a ZANU-PF official has the list of voters in a particular polling station, more so in the rural areas, the official would know or recognize all the 500 voters. If not by name and face, he will roughly know who they are. And as soon as the voting is done, the votes are counted at each polling station, and the results are put outside for everyone to see. Within 30 minutes, the ZANU-PF official will be able to say with some degree of certainty how each of those people who voted cast their vote. Take for the sake of argument that 400 out of the 500 turned up to vote. Half voted for the ruling party and the other half for the opposition. I think a ZANU-PF official who will know all those 400 or so people will be able to guess who of the 200 voted for the ruling party and who did not. So this issue of your vote is your secret is just a nonsense. It's not true in the case of Zimbabwe. What Mnangagwa has also done was to destroy all the country's institutions. The banks, the ZEC itself, the police, the judiciary. None of Zimbabwe's institutions now work. This has opened the door, of course, for the rampant corruption. And it is with this background in mind that one has got to remember that no investor would want to invest their money in a country whose banking system, judiciary, etc., are now dysfunctional. So this whole point of Zimbabwe is open for business was just nonsense. The people of Zimbabwe have got to realize that as long as we have got a pariah state ruled by corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical thugs who are in power by virtue of rigging elections, there will be no meaningful economic recovery, and the country will continue to sink deeper and deeper into the abyss. If you think of our education institutions, they've been hammered, they've been destroyed. Decades of being financially starved of resources have forced many teachers to leave their professions, and many of the institutions have all but collapsed. You've got to ask yourself, how are we going to rebuild the country with an ill-educated populace? So I repeat, this whole promise of Vision 2030 is a mirage. As long as Zimbabwe remains a pariah state, the country's economy will continue to sink into the abyss. How can we change it? How can we end this? I believe we have the opportunity to end it. It has been staring us in the face all along. In 2008, when ZANU-PF blatantly cheated in the March vote, the vote count of the March vote, and then used wanton violence during the runoff, SADC in the AU refused to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, forcing the country to go into a government of national unity, GNU. The country had the opportunity to implement the reforms. Unfortunately, Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends sold out. They failed to implement even one token reform in 5 years of the GNU. The fact that MDC sold out on reforms does not mean we do not need reforms anymore. Nor does it mean no one else can implement the reforms. SADC, when they realized that MDC guys had failed to implement the reforms, recommended that the 2013 elections should be postponed. Initially, ZANU agreed to that. This was at the meeting in Maputo in June 2013. But when ZANU-PF returned back to Zimbabwe, they changed their tune. They started asking, why should we postpone the elections? The reforms that SADC was saying should be implemented before the reforms, they started asking, what reforms? And it turned out that in the 5 years of the GNU, MDC guys had not proposed even one token reform. Not even one token reform. When SADC leaders realized that, they too had to give up. They allowed the 2023 elections to go ahead, and as they feared, ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections. In the 2023 elections, SADC and the AU threw Zimbabwe a new lifeline. The two organizations condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections as flawed and illegal. However, they could not go the extra mile and deny ZANU-PF legitimacy because millions of Zimbabweans had participated in the flawed elections. If Zimbabweans had not participated in those flawed elections, I believe SADC would have had the opportunity to deny ZANU-PF legitimacy and thus forcing the country to go into another GNU. If Zimbabweans do not participate in the 2028 elections, they will force ZANU-PF, or rather SADC, to accept that the election process is flawed and force the regime to go into a new GNU. It will be up to us to make sure that this time we implement all the democratic reforms. I repeat, the opportunity to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship is there. We only have to seize it. We only have to realize what we can do and do it. ZANU-PF is counting on the opposition, MDC, CCC, conning the people to participate in another flawed elections in their millions. It's up to us to reach out to some of those Chamisa Chete Chete brigade members and explain to them over and over again, if need be, the sheer futility of participating in flawed elections, the sheer futility of believing Chamisa's idiotic lies that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. After 45 years and counting of ZANU-PF rigging the elections, it is insane to keep participating in flawed elections on the mistaken belief that we can win, the opposition can win the rigged elections. We know that Chamisa will have no problem at all conning his Chamisa Chete Chete brigade members to participate in the flawed elections. It is incumbent on all of us to make sure that we explain to those people that Chamisa has made those promises so many times in the past, only to complain the day after voting that the elections were rigged. The very thing that he had said, he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF doing. We can end the ZANU-PF dictatorship if we apply ourselves. That is my message to the people of Zimbabwe today. Think about it. Thank you very much. Those of you who were able to join us, I'm sorry that today we were late in starting the discussion. Should be 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. I hope you'll be able to join me and usually Benjamin sometimes when he's available for tomorrow's discussion. Thank you very much. Have a good night.